The community center was buzzing. It was Veteran Employment Day in El Paso, Texas, a well-attended annual event where recruiters from tech firms, logistics companies, and federal contractors came searching for patriotic talent. American flags hung from plastic poles, upbeat country music played in the background, and rows of booths advertised open positions with bright-eyed reps in sharp suits. Then the door opened, and Maya Collins stepped in. She didn't look like what they expected. Her blazer was old but clean. Her boots, standard-issue Army combat boots, looked like they had seen more than one battlefield. She walked with a limp, her left leg stiff, her posture upright, but marked with quiet effort. Her eyes, however, were sharp, focused, a hawk's eyes behind thick lashes. The moment she stepped in, a hush rolled through the lobby like a breeze. No one wanted to admit they felt. Group of young men near the sign-in table leaned against the wall, laughing too loud, overdressed in expensive shoes and confident haircuts. One of them whispered with a smirk, "Damn, did someone's grandma take a wrong turn?" They chuckled. Another added, "She's probably here to hand out snacks." Maya heard them. Of course she did. She'd heard worse in boot camp, in combat, in recovery, and surprisingly, in job interviews. It didn't shake her, but it didn't amuse her either. She didn't break stride. At the sign-in table, a young woman with a clipboard merely looked up. Name? Maya Collins. Military. Branch? Army. 11 years active. Sergeant first class. Double quotes. Okay. You'll want to check out booths 12 through 25. Entry-level civilian roles. Have a great time. Maya signed her name and moved past the desk. She scanned the room. Company banners promised teamwork, innovation, growth. Smiling recruiters handed out pens and pamphlets. Some shook hands eagerly, but none reached out to her. Some avoided eye contact altogether. It was the same thing she'd experienced at 4 other fairs. It was the same look civilians gave when they couldn't decide whether to pity you or pretend you weren't there. Still, Maya didn't come to be liked. She came to be hired. At booth 9. A logistics firm rep gave her a 1-second glance and said, "Sorry, we're looking for applicants with direct warehouse experience." "I led supply convoys through Kandahar during monsoon season," she replied. The rep blinked, then smiled awkwardly. "Well, yeah, but we mean forklift certified, and—" He trailed off, already turning to the next applicant. At booth 14. She picked up a pamphlet titled Leadership Roles for Transitioning Veterans. As she turned it over in her hands, a young man behind her laughed loudly, nudging his friend. "She look like leadership to you?" He snorted. This time, Maya felt it, the sting. That old taste of being reduced, misunderstood, dismissed. She took a slow breath. The paper in her hand blurred. And just like that, the room around her disappeared. Suddenly, she wasn't in a community center anymore. She was back in southern Afghanistan, 2019. The desert heat beat down like a punishment. Her unit, Bravo Team, was on a recon route outside the wire when the explosion hit. Their Humvee flipped, flames shot up. Dust blinded her. She remembered the screams, the ringing in her ears. The taste of metal. Private Leary was trapped. Inside, blood pouring from his forehead. She didn't think, she moved. Her ankle cracked as she ran, but she pulled him out through fire and smoke. Then she went back for Corporal James. She didn't stop until they were safe behind a dune. Her back was burned, her right leg shattered in 3 places. She was medevaced out unconscious. Months of surgeries followed, then rehab, then silence. When she returned home, there were no parades, just paperwork and bills. She blinked. Back in the fair, holding that same paper. No one knew any of that. They just saw a woman in old boots who walked funny. She turned toward the next booth, but a quiet voice stopped her. "I know that limp," the voice said. She turned. A tall, older man with a grizzled beard sat alone by the vending machines. A faded Vietnam veteran cap rested on his knee. "IED?" he asked. Maya nodded. "Kandahar." He smiled. "Mine was Cambodia. 1970. Right ankle, just like yours." She hesitated, then sat beside him. They didn't talk much. Veterans rarely. Needed to say everything aloud. "You've got that fire still," he said finally. "Let them underestimate you. Just make sure you don't." Maya smiled faintly. "You sound like my CO." "I'm older than your CO." He laughed. "But listen, if they ask for speakers, you raise your hand. Don't wait for their permission." She was about to respond when an announcement came from the loudspeakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, our keynote speaker from the 1:30 slot just canceled. If there are any veterans in the crowd who'd like to speak about leadership experience, we're taking volunteers. Come to the podium." The mocking voices started again. "Maybe Boot Grandma wants to tell us war stories," someone said. More laughter. Maya stood up. The man raised an eyebrow. "You gonna go?" She tightened her jaw. "Yeah." He grinned. "Good, make him remember." And Maya Collins walked toward the stage. As Maya walked toward the podium, every step echoed in her head, louder than the last. The limp was more pronounced under pressure, but she didn't care. The same voices that mocked her earlier fell into silence as eyes turned to watch. She didn't fit the mold, not in looks, not in posture, not in presentation. And yet she moved with purpose, like someone who had walked through fire before. Because she had. The MC greeted her with surprise. Name?" "Maya Collins," she said clearly into the microphone. He glanced at the clipboard, then back at her. "You sure you want to do this?" "I wouldn't be here if I wasn't," she said, leveling her voice. A few chuckles rolled through the crowd. One guy in a navy blue blazer leaned toward his buddy, whispering loud enough for Maya to hear. "This should be cute." Another one nudged him. "Bet she cries in 2 minutes." The MC stepped aside and gestured. "Everyone, please welcome Sergeant First Class Maya Collins." The microphone squeaked once. The lights overhead buzzed. Maya stood tall, eyes scanning the crowd. She didn't see the recruiters or the suits. She saw her squad. Bravo team. Her brothers. Her sisters. Her family. Hand tightened around the edges of the podium. "I didn't come here today expecting to speak," she began. "But I guess it's time I stopped being quiet about who I am." Some in the back shifted uncomfortably. "I served in the U.S. Army for 11 years. I deployed 3 times. Kandahar was my last." Her voice was steady, but behind her words, memory stirred like smoke rising from a wreck. Flashback. Kandahar. Dust choked the air. The sun was low, and the road was quiet, too quiet. Maya's unit, Bravo team, was on a routine patrol in a convoy. She remembered sitting in the second Humvee, scanning the horizon. Suddenly, everything turned white. A roar, like a dragon's scream, split the world in half. Boom. Their Humvee flipped. Glass, fire, screams. Chaos. Maya came to upside down, pinned beneath the twisted steel of the frame. Her ears rang. Blood trickled into her eyes. She forced herself free, ignoring the sharp pain screaming up her leg. Private Leary was unconscious, smoke rising around him. She pulled him out with one arm while dragging her own body with the other. Her leg wasn't working. Something was broken. Didn't matter. The second explosion hit nearby. The concussion wave knocked her forward. She had one thought. Get them out. She got Leary to cover, then turned back. Corporal James was yelling for help. His arm caught between 2 metal bars. She didn't hesitate. By the time the medevac chopper arrived, Maya had rescued 2 soldiers, neutralized a threat using a sidearm, and nearly passed out from blood loss. Later, doctors said it was a miracle. She even lived. They didn't see her. Limp today. They didn't see the metal rods in her leg. They didn't see the skin grafts across her lower back. But they were there every day. Every hour. Back at the podium, she took a breath. I remember lying in a hospital bed for months, wondering if I'd ever walk again. I was told I'd be medically discharged. They said I'd probably never run, never lift anything above my shoulder. They said I should start thinking about what kind of desk work I'd like. She paused. A few faces were no longer smiling. I ignored all of that. I rebuilt myself, inch by inch. I still limp, but I can stand. And if you think, this limp makes me weak, you've never had to drag your best friend out of a burning vehicle while sniper rounds cut the dirt around your feet. Maya looked directly at the man who joked about her earlier. He was staring at the floor now. In those moments, leadership isn't a position. It's not a job title or a LinkedIn skill endorsement. It's making choices when no one else will. It's holding your people together when everything is falling apart. I didn't read that in a book. I bled for it. The room was silent. No one moved. She rolled up her left sleeve. The room collectively inhaled. Her arm was marked from wrist to elbow. Thick, textured burn scars twisting like rivers. A few gasps slipped out. I wear these because I didn't let a fire take me out. These are not wounds. These are proof. She let the sleeve fall and continued. When I applied to civilian jobs after my discharge, most people looked at my resume and said I was overqualified or not the right fit. What they really meant was, you don't look like the leader we imagined. But here's the thing, leadership doesn't always come wrapped in a power suit and a polished smile. Sometimes it walks with a limp and speaks from the fire. In the back of the room, Mr. Alvarez watched her with proud eyes. He tapped the brim of his cap once, almost like a salute. Maya's voice softened. There are other veterans out there just like me, overlooked, because we don't fit the image. That has to change. We're not damaged. We're built different. We've survived what most people couldn't even imagine. And we still show up. She stepped back from the mic. Silence. And then a slow clap. Not mockery. Not sarcasm. Respect. One recruiter stood, clapping. Then another. And another. Within seconds. The entire room was on its feet, some with tears in their eyes, others with jaws clenched, processing what they had just heard. Maya didn't smile. Not yet. Respect earned through pain wasn't something to celebrate. It was something to protect. She stepped off the stage and walked back to the crowd. But this time, no one laughed. They parted for her like a tide breaking for a storm survivor. The whispers were gone. They had seen what war had carved into her, and what strength truly looked like. The applause faded slowly, but its echo lingered like the last tremble of thunder after a storm. Maya stepped down from the stage, not toward the recruiters, not toward the booths, but toward the exit. She didn't need applause. She needed care. As she reached the hallway just outside the community center's main room, she leaned against the wall, closed her eyes, and breathed in deeply. Her body ached. Her left hip throbbed from standing too long. Her leg flared with heat from nerves never fully healed. But it wasn't the physical pain that weighed on her now. It was memory. The moment her boots hit that stage, something in her had opened again. The fire she'd walked through in Kandahar didn't just burn skin. It burned into her soul. And standing in front of that crowd, exposing her story, her scars, her truth, it had lit that fire again. And it hurt, but it also healed. You always had it, a voice said behind her. She turned. Mr. Alvarez stood there, hands in his pockets. a quiet smile on his weathered face. She didn't reply at first. She didn't have to. "You know what that was, right?" he said. "That wasn't a speech. That was a wake-up call." She smiled faintly. "I wasn't planning it, just felt like they needed to hear it." He nodded. "They did. But more importantly, you needed to say it." She looked away. "You ever feel like you're living in two different worlds? Like there's the one where you're a soldier, a leader, and then there's this other one where nobody sees any of it." Alvarez chuckled. "Every damn day. In the world out there, I'm just an old man. But in here," he tapped his chest, "I'm still in the jungle, still hearing the rotor blades, still feeling the weight of lives in my hands." Maya exhaled, her eyes softening. "Yeah, same." They stood in silence for a moment. Two generations of warriors, separated by decades, but bound by the same invisible tether. "You going back in there?" he asked finally. "I don't know." "You should. Not for them. For you." She looked through the glass window toward the room. Recruiters were now buzzing with renewed energy. Several of them glanced around, clearly looking for her. The ones who had laughed were nowhere near as loud now. Some looked like they were carrying regret on their backs, like it weighed more than her rucksack ever did. "I didn't come for attention," she said. "Good," Alvarez said. "Because you got something better than attention. You got their respect. Now go show them what it looks like to carry it." She nodded slowly. Then she walked back in. Booth 17, a cyber defense contractor, waved her over. A recruiter in a gray blazer practically jogged to meet her. "SFC Collins? I'm Dana Harville. I'm with Skyvale Technologies. Listen, we're actively looking for team leaders with crisis experience. Your background in field coordination, especially under combat pressure, would be incredible for our operations division." Maya looked at the card Dana handed her. It had a handwritten note on the back. Priority. Interview ASAP. Booth 19 offered her a position on the spot, a security firm with contracts across federal installations. Booth 12, which earlier ignored her, now asked for a full resume and availability. She didn't bask in it. She stayed, grounded. But the contrast wasn't lost on her. They hadn't seen her before. Not until she made them look. One of the younger men who had mocked her earlier, the one with the slick hair and smug face, approached quietly. "Hey," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Listen, I wanted to say I was out of line earlier. That was some real stuff. Up there. I didn't know." Maya met his eyes. "You didn't want to know." He blinked. She continued, calm but firm. "You saw someone who didn't look the part. That's what people like you always do. I've been doing this a long time. I don't need an apology. But I do hope you remember this the next time someone walks in looking different than you expect." He nodded, humbled, and backed away. Maya turned back to booth 14, the one where she first picked up the flyer about leadership roles. The rep looked up, a bit embarrassed. "I owe you an apology. We didn't give you the time you deserved earlier." Maya placed the flyer down. "You're giving it now. That's what matters." He smiled and gestured to a chair. "Let's talk?" She sat. They spoke for 15 minutes. He asked questions, real ones this time, about her logistics planning under fire, her decision-making during blackout comes, her command structure knowledge. He took notes. Serious ones. When the conversation ended, he stood. "I'll be honest. We were looking for someone to supervise 6 warehouse teams across 3 states. I thought we needed someone with commercial experience. But we need a leader. That's you." Maya shook his hand. "Send me the details. I'll think on it." He grinned. "Fair enough." When the fair ended, Maya stepped back outside into the sun. It was warm, bright, almost blinding. She stood there quietly for a moment, breathing it in. For the first time in a long while, the weight on her shoulders felt lighter. She had walked into that building expecting more rejection, more assumptions, more invisible walls. Instead, she had broken one down, and not just for herself, because somewhere out there, another woman like her, scarred, strong, overlooked, was preparing to walk into her own battlefield of judgment. And maybe, just maybe, they'd remember Maya Collins, the soldier who spoke fire. Maya didn't go home right away. After the job fair, she sat alone in her truck in the parking lot, hands resting on the steering wheel, still in her seatbelt. Her phone buzzed with new notifications. LinkedIn messages, recruiter emails, even a few direct messages from strangers who had been in the crowd and somehow recorded her speech. The clip had already been posted to a local veteran group on Facebook. It had hundreds of views in under an hour. She didn't feel pride. She felt unsettled. Recognition had come fast. Too fast. Where was all this when she had applied to 39 jobs in the past year and gotten only 6 interviews? Why did it take revealing her trauma, her scars, for people to finally see her value? She wasn't angry, but something inside her had shifted. Later that night, she sat at her kitchen table in her one-bedroom apartment, legs aching, body sore. She opened her laptop and logged into her email. 3 new interview requests. A 4th, from a federal agency she hadn't even spoken with. But there was one message that stood out. Subject: "That speech changed me. Thank you." It was from a woman named Chloe Santos, 26, Navy vet, discharged after a spinal injury during a training accident. She wrote, "I was in that crowd. I had one foot out the door. I thought no one would ever take me seriously again. But when you said, 'We still show up,' something woke up in me. I just wanted you to know I stayed. I applied to 3 companies today, all because of you." Maya sat back, blinking away tears. That was the moment everything changed for her. That it wasn't about finding a job anymore. That it was about making sure other women like her didn't walk away feeling invisible. By the next week, her speech had reached over 250,000 views online. Veteran organizations across Texas started reaching out. Some asked her to speak. Others asked her to mentor. A few asked if she'd consider joining their boards. Then came the call from Major Jackson, her old commanding officer. His voice, gravelly as ever, made her sit up straighter the second she heard it. "Sergeant Collins, I always knew you'd make more noise in peace than you ever did in war." She laughed. "Sir, I wasn't trying to make noise." "You didn't. You made impact." "Which is louder?" He paused. "What are you planning next?" She hesitated. "Honestly, I don't know." He said, "Well, figure it out soon, because the world's finally listening." That night, she pulled out an old notebook. The one she used in the hospital during recovery. Half full of quotes, short journal entries, and names of fallen soldiers she promised never to forget. At the top of a clean page, she wrote, "Scars of honor, a place for women warriors, a path forward, a voice they can follow." She didn't even know what it would be yet. A support group, an employment network, maybe even a nonprofit. But the idea was already alive. It just needed direction. And purpose was something Maya had in abundance. 3 weeks later, Maya walked into a community library in downtown El Paso. This time, not as a job seeker. As a speaker. The room was filled with young women, high school juniors and seniors mostly. Career day, not veterans, not professionals. Just girls on the edge of choosing who to become. She wore a black blouse, loose-fitting jeans, and her same boots. The limp was still there. So were the scars, though covered this time. She looked at them and saw wonder, confusion, curiosity. She didn't open with war stories. She opened with a question. How many of you have ever been told you're not strong enough? Nearly every hand went up. How many of you believed it? A few stayed up. She nodded. I'm here to show you what strength really looks like, and I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to show you. She rolled up her sleeve. A quiet gasp, but not from fear, from awe, when she finished. They didn't just applaud, they hugged her. They asked questions. They called her ma'am and sergeant with genuine respect. But most of all, they listened. And for Maya, that was everything. Because when people listen, they grow. And when young girls grow with voices like hers guiding them, they become unshakable. Back at home, Maya registered a domain. scarsofhonor.org. She wrote a mission statement. She started designing a support network for female veterans. Not one that focused on trauma, but on transformation. On careers, on community. On courage. It hadn't even been a month since that job fair. But everything had changed, because Maya had finally spoken. And the world, for once, had nothing to say except, we're listening. The website went live on a Thursday night. Simple, clean. Just a logo, a silhouette of a woman in uniform, one leg slightly bent as if walking with a limp, head held high. The title read, Scars of Honor, a new mission for the women who served. The homepage shared Maya's story in a few carefully chosen paragraphs. Not about her pain, but her perseverance. Her goal wasn't pity. It was power. Power earned through endurance. Through fire. By Friday morning, the inbox was full. I've waited 5 years for someone to say what you said. I thought I was alone until I found your site. Can I volunteer? Can I help? Maya sat on the couch, laptop on her knees, a cup of lukewarm coffee untouched beside her. She scrolled through messages, most from women who'd served in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and some who had never deployed, but still wore invisible scars from battles fought in silence. Back home, this wasn't just interest. It was need. And it was urgent. By the end of the weekend, Scars of Honor had over 1,200 subscribers. Maya's phone barely stopped buzzing. She set up Zoom calls, met with counselors, reached out to old commanders, and quietly respected NCOs she'd served with, especially the women. Some were stay-at-home moms now. Some were still active. Some had given up on ever being heard again. But they all said the same thing. Finally, someone saying it. It wasn't about the war anymore. It was about what came after. The first virtual session was held on a Tuesday night. Maya logged in expecting maybe 10 people. 30-7 showed up. Women in hoodies, uniforms, pajamas, with babies on hips, and service dogs at their feet. Their faces wore the weight of miles and memories. Some were smiling nervously, some quiet, some already crying before a single word had been spoken. Maya looked into the camera, steady. I'm not here to inspire you, she began. I'm here to remind you that you never stopped being a warrior. You just changed your battlefield. One woman, a former Air Force tech sergeant named Tasha, raised her hand. How do you deal with the guilt? She asked. Not from combat, but from not being where you thought you'd be now? Maya nodded. By remembering that guilt isn't a weakness. It's proof that you're still fighting. The only thing worse than feeling broken is pretending you never were. Silence, then quiet tears, then fierce applause, even through the screen. By week 2, a retired Marine captain offered Maya office space downtown. No rent, she said. Just promise me this'll help someone like me. Because I was almost gone last year. Maya signed the lease. Nothing fancy. Second floor, shared hallway, noisy plumbing. But it was real. A place, A headquarters dot she hung an old photo in. The entrance, her squad in Kandahar, dusty and sweaty, smiling in the sun after a 16-hour patrol. Half of them gone now, but their faces reminded her, every day, keep going. That same week, Maya received a formal invitation to speak at the National Veterans Women's Summit in Washington, D.C. The subject line read, "Keynote request, you. Spoke for us all." She stared at it for 10 minutes dot, then accepted dot 2 months after that first speech at the job fair. Maya stood at a polished podium in a ballroom of nearly 600 people. The lights were bright. The room was silent. This time, she didn't walk alone. Behind her were 10 members of Scars of Honor, women who had flown in from 7 states, each one standing tall in heels, braces, crutches, or dress blues. Maya spoke. Her voice didn't tremble. She didn't need to tell her story again. She told theirs. She told of the former sergeant, who hadn't spoken to her family in 3 years, but now ran a podcast for PTSD awareness, of the single mother who'd been denied jobs for years, and now managed a VA-funded training center, of the Navy vet who lost her hearing and found her voice. The room rose to its feet before she even finished. Later that evening, as she stood outside watching the D.C. skyline glow, a young woman approached her. Mid-20s, glasses, nervous smile. "I didn't serve," she said. "But my mom did." She drank herself into silence. "I wish she'd had something like this when she came home. Thank you." Maya didn't respond with words. She hugged her. Some things can't be said, only felt. Back in El Paso, her team had grown to 5 volunteers. A lawyer helped file the nonprofit paperwork. A tech friend helped redesign the website. Donations started. Coming in, not just money, but gear, space, job leads. Every day, Maya received messages like, "You gave me back my mission. I thought I'd been forgotten. You made me believe I still matter." She printed them out and taped them across her office wall. A mosaic of hope dot letters from the front lines of life after war. One night, sitting on her porch under a quiet desert sky, Maya whispered into the wind, "I didn't survive to be silent." The stars didn't answer, but they burned a little brighter. 3 months into Scars of Honor's official launch, Maya found herself balancing more than she ever imagined. Media requests, donor meetings, support groups, training webinars, speaking tours. Everyone wanted her to tell her story. Everyone wanted to spotlight the veteran who dared to speak scars into strength. But behind the strong voice, the calm eyes, the confident walk, Maya was tired. Some nights, she fell asleep still in her jeans, laptop open beside her. She barely remembered what rest used to feel like. Even in war, there were shifts, rotations, downtime. Now, as the face of a movement, there was no such luxury. She told herself it was a good problem to have. But the truth? The war hadn't ended dot. It had just changed form. One night, after a live Zoom interview with a local New York station, she closed her laptop, exhaled, and sat back in her chair. The office was dark, save for the street lamp light filtering through. The blinds. On her desk were 3 unopened letters from women in prison, veterans struggling with addiction. One of them wrote, "I got caught trying to numb the things I never learned how to talk about. They gave me a sentence. But your story gave me a new one. One I might still get to live." Maya's throat tightened. She stared at the photo on the wall, her old unit. Bravo Team Dot, she thought of James, the corporal she dragged out of that burning vehicle. He didn't survive the second deployment. He'd taken his own life 6 months after returning home. He hadn't talked. Neither had she. Not for years, dot, until now, dot. And now, her voice carried more than just her story. It carried others' chances. But the weight was growing. The next morning, she nearly canceled the upcoming high school event. She wasn't feeling it. She had no energy left to inspire anyone. But then a message came through. My daughter is in that audience today. She's been silent ever since her brother died in Afghanistan. Please go. She listens to women like you. That was all it took. Maya showed up, exhausted but present. The auditorium was packed. Over 200 girls. Diverse faces, restless energy, soft chatter. Many didn't know what to expect. Most assumed she was another adult with a PowerPoint. She stepped on stage in boots and jeans. The limp was still there, subtle but real. She didn't use a mic. She didn't need to. I'm not here to tell you what to do with your life, she said. I'm here to remind you that pain doesn't disqualify you from purpose. The room stilled. I used to think my scars meant I was broken. Now I understand. They're where the light gets in. They're the proof that I chose to survive. She told them about firefights and surgeries, about shame and silence, about strength that didn't come from muscles, but from decisions. Ended with one line. I bled so someone else wouldn't have to. That's what leadership means. The auditorium erupted in applause. Afterward, girls waited in line to hug her, to tell her their own stories. Grief, bullying, depression, dreams that felt too big for their skin. One girl, maybe 15, whispered, "You remind me of who I want to become." Maya blinked hard. "You already are," she replied. Later that week, Maya's team noticed a surge in site traffic. One of the high schoolers had posted a short video of her talk on TikTok. It hit 2.3 million views in 48 hours. Suddenly, national news stations were calling, book agents, film producers. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. But Maya wasn't interested in being famous. She was interested in being useful. Still, her team convinced her to take one opportunity. A sit-down on a major veteran-themed docuseries. Filmed in LA, full crew, large platform. The producers promised control over the final cut and gave her full veto rights. So she went. In the green room, under hot studio lights, Maya sat across from a decorated general who had seen her clip. He sighed. "You may not wear a uniform anymore, Sergeant Collins, but you're still leading a unit." She smiled, thoughtful. "Feels more like I'm holding a line." "Same thing." He leaned forward. "Do you realize how many women needed your voice before you even opened your mouth that day at the job fair?" Maya looked down. "I didn't think anyone would listen." He said, "They weren't ready to, until you gave them permission." After the segment aired, Maya returned to El Paso to find her small office filled with letters, care packages, and a donation big enough to rent the entire floor. She expanded immediately, added counseling services, career transition boot camps, and a family trauma support arm. But she also began delegating more. She trained 3 women from her original Zoom group to lead sessions. One of them was Chloe Santos, the woman who had messaged her after that first speech. "I'm not you," Chloe had said nervously at first. "No," Maya replied, "you're you. That's why it'll work." Passing the torch wasn't surrender. It was survival. It was sustainability. It was legacy. And so Maya finally rested, not in the way civilians understood rest, but in the way warriors did, knowing someone else was carrying the banner forward. Knowing her voice had turned into a chorus, and that chorus would never be silenced again. 3 years after she limped into that job fair and turned humiliation into history, Maya Collins no longer introduced herself as former anything. Now she simply said, "I'm Maya. I run a mission." Her work had outgrown its modest El Paso roots. Scars of Honor had 5 regional chapters in Austin, Chicago, Denver, Atlanta, and Seattle, each run by women who had once sat in silent pain and now stood as community anchors. was no longer just a support network. It had evolved into a movement, connecting employers, therapists, educators, families, and yes, even politicians. But no matter how far it spread, Maya never let it drift from its core, truth. And service. In one of the new regional groups, a woman named Kara Blake from Colorado Springs found herself leading a workshop for veterans, struggling with re-entry into civilian life. She'd never led anything before. She was a soft-spoken former Air Force mechanic who had nearly taken her life the year prior. She'd worn silence like armor until Maya herself had called her after reading Kara's suicide note, which she'd posted publicly on a locked blog meant for friends. "I know you don't know me," Maya had said, "but I know what it feels like when even gravity feels optional." Kara had broken down and then built herself back up, piece by jagged piece. Now she stood in front of 20 others in Denver, saying, "You're not here to be saved. You're here to be seen." Meanwhile, back in El Paso, a local college professor reached out to Maya with a proposal. "What if we taught your journey?" he asked. "Not just your personal story, but the transition from pain to purpose as a model for trauma recovery." Maya hesitated. She wasn't looking to be studied. But then he explained, "You've done what millions struggle to do. And you're teaching others to do it, too. This isn't about your story. It's about the blueprint you've drawn." They launched a pilot course called Scars and Strength, Veteran Reintegration and Female Leadership. Enrollment maxed out in 2 weeks. Then came the call from the Pentagon. A newly formed task force on female veteran advocacy was being assembled under the Secretary of Defense. They wanted Maya not to speak, not to stand in a photo, but to lead. Just a 3-month rotation, the official explained. "We need a warrior, a disruptor, someone the women actually trust." Maya sat quietly on the call for a moment, then asked, "Will I have the authority to make real changes? Or will I be a poster child?" "You'll have access," the official replied. "What you do with it, that's up to you." She accepted. Her first day in D.C., she wore her scars like medals. A tailored blazer over a sleeveless blouse revealed her burn marks, a subtle limp, a sharp gaze. The men noticed. The women stood taller. Inside the briefing room, Maya spoke bluntly. "Stop treating our traumas like fine print. We're not here for your checkbox. We're here because we earned this space." She proposed mandatory reintegration programming focused specifically on female vets, something never before formalized. She requested trauma-informed leadership training for senior officers, and she demanded a task force within the VA dedicated to female PTSD support. Some resisted, most listened. All remembered her. 1 month into her DC post, she was approached after a meeting by a senior analyst named Miranda. "I used to laugh at stories like yours," Miranda confessed. "Thought they were dramatized, exaggerated. But then my sister came home, and I realized I knew everything about her deployment and nothing about her pain." Maya didn't flinch. "Now you do," she said. "So what are you going to do about it?" When her 3 months ended, the Pentagon requested an extension. Maya declined. She wasn't made for marble hallways and filtered language. She was meant for soil, scars and change that grew from the ground up. Back in El Paso, Maya walked into her original office, now a 3-story building bustling with volunteers, service dogs, laughter, and tears. A young woman ran up to her, no more than 22, her arm in a sling, eyes full of urgency. "You're her, right?" she asked breathlessly. "You're the one who started this?" Maya smiled. "Depends. What do you need?" The girl hesitated. "Hope, I think," Maya nodded. "Good. We've got plenty." That night, she joined a campfire gathering at the Scars of Honor Retreat Center outside the city. It was a moonless sky, the stars fierce and exposed. The women sat in a circle, some in wheelchairs, some barefoot, all with stories carved into the folds of their lives. They weren't broken. They were branded. By survival. As the fire crackled, a new member asked, "When do you stop feeling like a mess?" Maya smiled gently. "You don't," she said. "You just learn how to build something beautiful with the pieces." Silence followed. And then one woman whispered, "That's what we're doing, isn't it?" Maya nodded. "Every single day." And as the fire danced against the backdrop of the quiet Texas hills, Maya realized something she hadn't before. She was no longer the only voice in the room. She was now one of many. And the silence they once suffered in? It had been permanently broken. 4 years after walking into a job fair and being laughed at, Maya Collins walked into the lighthouse. But this time, no one laughed. She didn't wear a uniform. She didn't need to. The scars on her arm, the confident poise in her stance, and the long list of national accomplishments trailed behind her like medals, invisible to the eye, but impossible to ignore. She had been invited to receive the Presidential Medal of Civilian Honor for her service to veterans, especially women, who had returned from war only to find themselves in new battles back home. But that wasn't what mattered most to her. What mattered most was who sat beside her. In the front row were 20 women Maya had helped personally. Each of them had once been broken, homeless, voiceless, or lost. Now they were nurses, counselors, small business owners, and mothers. Some had even started nonprofits of their own, inspired by Maya's leadership. One of them was Chloe Santos, now executive. Director of the Pacific chapter of Scars of Honor. Another was Kara Blake, who had just published her memoir, Steel and Softness. And near the center sat Dr. Elaine Warren, the same employer who once interrupted Maya's job fair pitch with a smirk. Elaine wasn't smirking now. She had been the first person to mock Maya, and the first to donate to her nonprofit after realizing what she had dismissed. "I didn't see you," she had told Maya once in a letter, "but now I see clearly. Forgive my blindness." Maya had never replied. She didn't need to. The work spoke louder than any response could. As the ceremony began, the president stepped forward to introduce her. Maya Collins didn't come home from war unscarred. She came home wounded in body and spirit, the president began. But she did something remarkable. She transformed those wounds into a lifeline for thousands. She reminded us that service doesn't end when the battlefield grows quiet. It continues in boardrooms, classrooms, support centers, and living rooms. Wherever healing is needed, Maya has stood. And then, please join me in welcoming a warrior in every sense of the word, Maya Collins. Maya stepped up to the podium. She was wearing a simple black dress with short sleeves, unafraid to show the burn scars on her shoulder and arm. Her limp had softened, but it remained, a quiet reminder of fire, shrapnel, and survival. She stood still as the room applauded. When the clapping faded, she leaned in. "I want to start with the moment I was laughed at," she said, "because, in a strange way, that moment was a gift. I was laughed at because I dared to show up as I was. And when they mocked me, I learned something no military training ever taught me. That true courage isn't dodging bullets. It's showing your scars in a world that tells you to hide them." The room fell completely silent. I built Scars of Honor not because I had all the answers, but because I had too many questions. Why were we silent? Why were we invisible? Why were women like me still feeling like they had to be healed before being heard? Maya's voice didn't tremble. "I didn't build a charity. I built a fire, and now it's spreading. You don't have to carry your pain alone. You never did." She ended with a quote from a letter she once received, the one from the woman in prison. Thank you for proving that your scars don't disqualify you from walking into any room. They qualify you to lead it. And with that, she stepped back. That night, at the private dinner following the ceremony, Maya slipped outside the ballroom for air. She stood under a marble arch, watching the sun set over the Capitol dome. A voice called from behind. You started a quiet revolution. It was the general she had worked with during her Pentagon rotation. She smiled. No such thing as a quiet revolution. He nodded. Still, we needed it. Maya looked out at the horizon. I'm just the first. The fire's moving now. 6 months later, Maya didn't renew her lease in El Paso. Instead, she relocated to a rural ranch in New Mexico, a peaceful stretch of land surrounded by red clay cliffs and hummingbird feeders. She opened the Scars of Honor Retreat Center, a permanent, long-term wellness program for female veterans dealing with complex trauma, PTSD, and reintegration fatigue. It wasn't flashy. It didn't need to be. Every week, new women arrived, some limping, some shaking, some too numb to speak. By the end of each week, they left stronger. They left heard. One day, a 19-year-old recruit who had just finished basic training arrived with her mother. The girl's eyes were wide. I'm scared, she admitted. What if I come back broken? Maya took her hand gently and looked her in the eye. You won't come back broken, she said. You might come back changed, marked, but that's not the same. You'll come back with stories that need to be told, and we'll be here to help you tell them. And so the story came full circle, from the moment they laughed at her to the moment they stood for her, from silence and scars to service and strength. Maya Collins didn't ask for a legacy. She just refused to let her pain go unused. And in doing so, she gave a generation of warriors the most powerful permission of all, to be seen. To be heard. To be whole.